The rain came down in sheets, soft at first, then heavier, until the city park blurred into shades of gray and silver. Amelia Voss tightened her thin coat around her shoulders and called out to the group of children darting between puddles near the playground. Their laughter rang through the drizzle, high and bright against the hum of traffic from the street beyond the iron fence. It was nearly dismissal time, and most teachers would have ushered the children inside, but Amelia believed storms held lessons too: the thrill of discovery, the joy of dancing in the rain, the art of finding wonder in chaos. Her umbrella tilted slightly as she stooped to tie the shoelace of little Mia, who had somehow managed to untie both shoes at once. When Amelia looked up again, her heart froze. A red rubber ball, bright against the dull asphalt, had rolled through a gap in the fence and out into the street. "Ethan," she shouted, just as one of the smaller boys broke from the group, chasing it without hesitation. Everything happened in a heartbeat. The sound of screeching tires ripped through the air. A black sedan came hurtling around the corner, its headlights slicing through the rain. Amelia dropped her umbrella, her body moving before her mind could catch up. She ran, her boots slipped on the slick pavement as she lunged forward, arms outstretched. She caught the boy's small body just in time, yanking him backward with all her strength. The impact of the car's mirror clipped her arm, sending pain shooting through her shoulder, but she didn't let go. Together they tumbled onto the wet grass, his frightened sob muffled against her chest. For a moment, the world went silent except for the pounding of rain. Amelia could feel her own heart beating like a drum, her breath ragged, the metallic taste of adrenaline on her tongue. The child trembled in her arms. "It's okay," she whispered, pressing a shaking hand to his hair. "You're safe. I've got you." The screech of brakes cut through the downpour. A black luxury car stopped just beyond the curb, its tinted window rolling down before the door flung open. A man stepped out, tall, broad-shouldered, and furious. His tailored suit darkened instantly under the rain, but he didn't seem to notice. He was already kneeling beside them, his voice sharp with fear. "Ethan." The boy lifted his head at the sound, blinking through tears. "Uncle Marcus," the man's breath caught. Relief and anger warred in his expression as he pulled the boy into his arms. His movements were careful, practiced, but his composure wavered when he turned to Amelia. She was soaked to the bone, her hair plastered to her face, her arm bleeding where the car's mirror had struck. "You pulled him out of the street," he said, his voice low, raw, disbelieving. Amelia nodded, wincing as she pushed herself up. "He's fine. Just scared. Please don't scold him, he didn't think." Marcus Hale, the man whose name echoed through every business headline, stared at her like she'd spoken in another language. Few people ever told him what to do, no one dared to soften their tone when addressing him. Yet here was this soaked, trembling schoolteacher speaking to him as if he were anyone else. "I'm taking you both to the hospital," he said, already reaching for his phone. "That's not necessary." Amelia stood quickly, ignoring the ache in her arm. "He's unharmed, and I'm fine." "Really?" Rain poured harder, drumming on the car roof. Marcus looked at her like she was made of something unfamiliar, something genuine. "You were almost killed." "Almost doesn't count," she said with a faint smile. "You should take him home. He's shaking." Ethan clung to her coat, unwilling to let go even as Marcus tried to coax him toward the car. The sight softened the billionaire's face, erasing some of the rigid control he wore like armor. He looked at her again, and for the briefest second,
something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of awe, of guilt, of something he didn't yet understand. "Miss," he began. "Voss," she replied. "Amelia Voss. I owe you." "No." She cut him off gently, her tone final. "You don't owe me anything. Just keep him safe." And before he could say another word, she turned and walked back toward the playground, rain still falling in silver sheets, leaving Marcus standing in the street with his nephew in his arms, watching the woman who had just risked her life vanish into the storm. For the first time in years, Marcus Hale felt something unfamiliar stirring inside him, Gratitude, yes, but also wonder. The kind that doesn't fade with the rain. The kind that stays. The rain had stopped by morning, but the city still smelled of wet asphalt and tension. Amelia Voss's arm throbbed beneath the bandage as she hurried down the narrow hall of her small apartment building. Her landlord had already slipped a warning note under her door about the late rent. She folded it and pushed it into her pocket, pretending it didn't sting. She had spent the night replaying the scene from the park over and over again. The red ball, the child's scream, the flash of headlights. She should have been terrified, yet what lingered most vividly in her mind was the man's face when he'd looked at her, his sharp composure cracking into something almost human. Marcus Hale. She had read his name before in headlines, but never expected it to collide with her life. When she reached her classroom that afternoon, the smell of crayons and chalk dust welcomed her like a promise of normalcy. Children laughed, paper fluttered, and for a few blessed moments she forgot about everything outside those walls. But just as she began a story about the rain cycle, the door opened. The entire class went silent. He stood there. Marcus Hale filled the doorway, tall and immaculate in a charcoal suit, his presence so commanding that even the restless 5-year-olds froze mid-fidget. He looked completely out of place among the child-sized chairs and pastel walls, yet his eyes, gray and intent, searched only for her. The sudden hush was broken by a few gasps and a whisper that rippled through the room like wind through leaves. Amelia's pulse stuttered. "Mr. Hale," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "This is a classroom." "I know," he said quietly. "May I speak to you outside?" The children's wide eyes followed her as she stepped into the hall, closing the door behind her. The click of her shoes echoed softly in the silence. Marcus was holding a sleek umbrella, though it wasn't raining anymore. It seemed less a necessity than a shield. "I wanted to thank you again," he began. "Properly this time." "I told you that wasn't necessary," she replied. "Your nephew is safe. That's all that matters." He exhaled slowly, as if unused to being contradicted. "You risked your life. At least let me repay your kindness." Amelia shook her head. "I didn't do it for kindness. I did it because he's a child." Something flickered in his expression, confusion, maybe admiration, maybe both. He glanced toward the door where laughter had resumed inside. "Ethan hasn't stopped talking about you. He wakes from nightmares calling your name. You've become his hero. He's a brave boy," she said softly. "He just needs time. I'd like you to spend that time with him." Marcus's tone was businesslike now, the shift almost dizzying. "I'm offering you a position. Private tutor for Ethan, at my estate. Full salary, accommodation, whatever you need." Amelia stared at him, certain she'd misheard. "I'm a teacher, not a governess, and I don't accept charity." "It's not charity," he said firmly. "Ethan trusts you. That's rare for him. I can't ignore that." Her first instinct was to refuse again, but behind his polished confidence, she saw the faint exhaustion of a man carrying more than he admitted, the grief of someone who had lost too much and didn't know how to reach what remained. She hesitated, torn between pride and compassion. "I'll think about it," she said finally. He inclined his head, something like respect in his eyes. "That's all I ask." When he left, the scent of expensive cologne lingered in the air, mingling with chalk and crayons. Amelia returned to her students, but her thoughts refused to settle. As she helped Mia glue construction paper to a cardboard cloud, she noticed a flash of movement outside the window, a sleek black car idling across the street. A figure sat behind the tinted glass watching the school entrance. Her heart skipped. Was it him again? Or someone else? The bell rang. Children scattered, parents arrived, and the car pulled away into traffic. By the time she stepped onto the sidewalk, only rain puddles remained. A strange unease crept through her, as if invisible threads were tightening around her life, pulling her toward a world far beyond her own. That night, long after she turned off the lights, a soft knock echoed through her apartment door. She She hesitated, wrapping her cardigan tighter, and peered through the peephole. On the floor lay a small white envelope with her name written in precise handwriting. No one stood in the hallway. Inside was a single card. "Thank you for saving my family. I don't forget debts. M.H." She looked up sharply, but the corridor was empty. Only the distant hum of the city answered. In that moment, Amelia Voss realized her quiet life was over. Whatever force had brought Marcus Hale into her world was not done with her yet. The mansion loomed over the hillside like a secret the city had forgotten. By the time Amelia's taxi wound its way up the narrow road to the Hale estate, dusk had already swallowed the sky. The iron gates opened with a low mechanical hum, revealing a long driveway lined with wet oak trees glistening from a recent rain. The air smelled of pine, rain, and something expensive she couldn't name. She sat frozen, clutching her bag as the car stopped in front of towering doors, framed by marble pillars. This was not her world, yet fate had brought her straight to its heart. When Marcus appeared at the entrance, dressed in black and illuminated by the golden light spilling from the hall behind him, he looked less like a man and more like a storm contained in human form. His gaze found hers instantly, sharp but unreadable. "You came," he said simply. "I said I'd think about it," Amelia replied, stepping out into the chill. "I didn't say yes." "Then come inside," he said. "You can decide after you meet him." Inside, the air was warm but heavy. Every sound echoed. The walls were lined with paintings that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. Yet beneath the luxury there was silence so deep it felt almost haunted. A boy's laughter broke it a moment later, light and sudden, and Ethan ran down the staircase, his face brightening the instant he saw her. "Miss Voss!" he shouted, throwing his arms around her waist. "You came!" His joy was pure, unfiltered, and it made her heart ache. She knelt and brushed his hair back. "Of course I did, but only to see how you're doing." Marcus stood a few feet away, watching the exchange with an expression she couldn't read. Pride, maybe, or longing. The hard lines of his face softened when he saw his nephew smile. For a brief moment, the powerful businessman looked utterly human. Dinner was served in a dining hall so vast it could have hosted a small concert. Amelia tried not to gawk at the chandelier or the paintings of Hale ancestors watching from the walls. Marcus sat across from her, every movement deliberate. He spoke little, but his eyes missed nothing. Between Ethan's cheerful chatter and the quiet clinking of silverware, tension hummed like electricity in the air. Halfway through the meal, the butler entered, pale and anxious. "Sir," he began, "there's been another message." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Show me." The butler handed him a folded piece of paper. Marcus read it silently, then folded it again with mechanical precision. "Continue dinner," he said, dismissing the man with a curt nod. Amelia noticed how his hand trembled slightly when he set the paper down. "Is something wrong?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then forced a thin smile. "Just business. Nothing you need to worry about." But worry bloomed anyway. She had seen the brief flash of unease in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from normal business matters. Later, when Ethan ran off to show her his art room, Marcus followed, stopping in the doorway to watch as she crouched beside the boy's drawings. The sight of her laughing among the scattered crayons seemed to fill something hollow inside him, but shadows clung to him, even then. That night, Marcus stood in his study, staring out the tall window overlooking the dark woods. His reflection in the glass was a stranger's, one haunted by memories and by debts unpaid. Behind him, his phone buzzed, the same unknown number as before. A single message glowed on the screen. "She's in your house now. You really think she's just a teacher?" Marcus's grip on the phone tightened until his knuckles whitened. He glanced toward the corridor where Amelia's soft laughter echoed faintly. Doubt slithered in, unwelcome but unstoppable. He had checked her background, searched everything. There was nothing suspicious. Yet the timing of her appearance in his life, the way fate had placed her in that park, the mystery of her calm defiance, it all twisted inside his mind like a question he couldn't shake. Upstairs, Amelia lay awake in the guest room, staring at the ornate ceiling. The mansion creaked in the wind, a sound both beautiful and eerie. She couldn't help but feel like she'd stepped into a story far larger than herself. Somewhere below, in another wing of the house, Marcus stood in the dim glow of his study, torn between gratitude and suspicion. Neither of them knew that by morning, the first crack in the world they'd built would appear, and the secret behind those anonymous messages would begin to surface. The following morning began with sunlight, but it felt like a lie. The Hale estate shimmered under a calm sky, yet beneath that stillness, something restless stirred. Amelia walked through the garden with Ethan, guiding him through his lesson on plants, while Marcus spoke quietly on his phone at the edge of the terrace. She couldn't hear his words, only the clipped tone of a man who had spent his life commanding storms. When he ended the call, his expression was unreadable, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed him. "Everything all right?" she asked when he joined them. He gave her a faint smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's just the press. They think they've uncovered something interesting." Amelia frowned. "About your company?" "About us," he said simply. Before she could respond, a sleek black car turned up the driveway. The sound of tires on gravel made Marcus's jaw tighten. Out stepped two men in suits carrying cameras and microphones, reporters. The gate guards shouted after them, but they ignored the warning. "Mr. Hale," one called, his voice sharp with hunger for a headline. "Is it true you're hiding your new mistress under the title of tutor?" Amelia froze. The words felt like a slap. The camera turned toward her, zooming in, capturing every shocked blink, every flush of humiliation. Marcus moved so fast she barely saw it. He positioned himself between her and the camera, his voice suddenly cold and deadly. "You're trespassing," he said. "Get off my property, Beffin, or I have you arrested." The reporter smirked. "The public deserves to know what kind of relationship you have with your employee, especially one who seems to have replaced your late brother's wife in the house." Marcus lunged forward, snatching the microphone, his fury barely contained. "You will not speak about my family again," he growled. The guards arrived, dragging the men back toward the car. Cameras still clicked, flashes exploding like gunfire. In moments, they were gone, but the damage was already done. Amelia stood frozen, the echo of their words burning in her ears. Inside, she paced the drawing room, her heart pounding. "They're going to twist everything," she said. "They'll destroy your reputation." "My reputation can survive anything," Marcus said quietly. "But I won't let them drag you through it." "I can handle it," she argued, but he shook his head. "You don't know what they're capable of. They dig until they find something, or until they make something up." He was right. That night, her phone began buzzing nonstop. Messages, missed calls, emails, all from reporters, some polite, others cruel. By morning, her name was plastered across the news. Teacher seduces billionaire employer. Mystery woman moves into Hale Mansion after saving his nephew. At school, parents whispered. One mother turned away when Amelia entered the building. Another removed her child from class without meeting her eyes. Every step felt heavier than the last. When she reached her classroom, her principal was waiting. "Maybe take a few days off," he said gently, "until things calm down." She nodded numbly. There was nothing to say. By the time she returned to the estate, Marcus was already waiting in the grand hall. The papers were spread across the marble table, each headline worse than the last. His jaw was tight, his voice low with controlled rage. "Someone leaked this," he said. "Those photos, those details, only a few people could have known." "Someone inside?" Amelia asked. He met her gaze. "Cess, only one who wants to see me fall." Outside, thunder rolled across the horizon, heavy and close. The storm was returning, just as the city began to devour their names. Amelia looked toward Ethan's room upstairs, where the boy slept, unaware of the chaos beyond his world. "What do we do now?" she whispered. Marcus turned to her, his expression fierce, protective. Now we fight back. He moved closer, lowering his voice. I've faced rivals, board members, even governments. But this is different. They've made it personal. They've come for you. For the first time, Amelia saw something raw in his eyes. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. As lightning split the sky, she realized their lives had changed again. What began as gratitude had turned into something dangerous and intimate. The world was watching, waiting for them to break. But she wasn't going anywhere. That night, as rain lashed against the glass, Marcus stood at his office window staring into the dark, while Amelia sat alone in her room. Both were thinking the same thing. Someone had declared war, and love was now the most dangerous secret of all. The storm outside had not stopped for 2 days, and inside the mansion the tension felt just as relentless. Every morning new headlines appeared, twisting their story a little tighter. Every night another anonymous message arrived, reminding Marcus that whoever was behind the scandal was not finished. Amelia spent her days trying to comfort Ethan, shielding him from the whispers that leaked even into his school, while Marcus buried himself in phone calls with lawyers and board members who had once called him friend, but now spoke to him like a liability. On the third evening, the silence between them cracked. Amelia found him in his study, staring at a wall of documents, his hair unkempt, his tie discarded on the desk beside a half-empty glass of whiskey. You haven't slept, as she said quietly. He didn't look up. Sleep wastes time I don't have. Marcus, she began, but he cut her off. Someone inside this company is feeding them information. My CFO Victor swears it's not him, but the leaks are too precise. They want me distracted, discredited, maybe destroyed. Amelia moved closer, her voice steady. Then stop thinking like a businessman and start thinking like a human being. Whoever is doing this isn't attacking your company anymore. They're attacking you. Us. That last word hung in the air. Marcus finally looked up, and for the first time she saw real exhaustion behind his eyes. Not the kind that comes from work, but from heartbreak. Why are you still here? He asked softly. Everyone else would have run by now. Because I know what's real, she said. Something shifted in his gaze. He rose from his chair and walked around the desk until they stood only a breath apart. You think you know me, he said. But there are things about this world that would crush you if you saw them. Then show me, she whispered. Stop hiding behind your power. For a heartbeat, he said nothing. Then he turned, pressing a button on the wall. A section of bookshelf slid aside, revealing a hidden room. Inside were stacks of files, servers humming softly, screens glowing with numbers and coded messages. Amelia stepped in, the air cold and humming with secrets. This is where the truth lives, Marcus said. Every contract, every threat, every deal they used to keep this empire alive. She traced a trembling finger over the files. And this is what they want to destroy? Yes, he said. And they're using you to do it. Before she could respond, the lights flickered. Marcus's phone buzzed on the desk. A message glowed across the screen. Check your email if you want to see who she really is. He stared at it, his expression unreadable. Amelia stepped forward. Don't, she warned, but he was already opening his laptop. A file downloaded in seconds, revealing a set of photographs. Her standing outside a downtown cafe, speaking with a man in a dark coat. The timestamps matched the week before the scandal began. Marcus's voice hardened. Who is he? Amelia felt her blood run cold. I don't know, she said. I've never seen him before. He slammed the laptop shut. Then how did someone take these? I don't know, she repeated, her heart pounding. Marcus, please, you have to believe me. But his walls were already rising. She saw it in his eyes, that old instinct to trust no one. "You need to leave the estate," he said quietly, "until I can figure this out." The words cut deeper than any headline could. She backed away, her throat tight. "You think I'm part of this?" "I think," he said slowly, "that I don't know what to think anymore." The storm outside roared louder as Amelia walked out into the rain, each step heavier than the last. Behind her, Marcus stood frozen at the window, staring at the woman who had risked her life for his nephew, the woman who had taught him to hope. Doubt had poisoned everything, and he could no longer tell if the enemy was outside his gates or already inside his heart. Lightning split the sky as Amelia disappeared down the long driveway. Somewhere in the darkness, a car engine started and a shadowed figure watched her go, a phone pressed to their ear. "It's done," the voice said. "He's beginning to doubt her." And for the first time since this war began, the enemy smiled. The rain had stopped, but the city felt heavier than ever. Amelia walked through the streets with no umbrella, no destination, only the hollow ache of betrayal echoing inside her chest. Every face she passed blurred into the next, every sound dulled beneath the weight of Marcus's last words. "Leave the estate, until I can figure this out." She had risked everything for his family, and now she was just another name, whispered in suspicion. She rented a small room above a bookstore, the kind that smelled of dust and forgotten stories. At night, she lay awake, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering how trust could vanish so quickly. She told herself she would not cry, but sometimes the tears came anyway, soft and silent. 2 days later, a knock came at her door. When she opened it, a familiar figure stood there drenched from rain, holding a briefcase. It was Victor Lang Marcus's CFO, the man whose name she had only heard in fragments during those tense nights at the estate. "Miss Voss," he said politely, his eyes unreadable. "May I come in?" She hesitated but stepped aside. Victor entered, scanning the room with practiced calm. "I wanted to apologize," he began. "This whole scandal has gone out of control. Marcus is under pressure from every side. He doesn't know who to trust." "Apparently not the woman who saved his nephew," she said bitterly. Victor's smile was small and sympathetic. "You're right. It's unfair. But maybe you can help him see the truth." She frowned. "How?" He placed a folder on the table. "These are documents from our internal server. Emails, bank transfers, communications that might reveal who started the leak. Marcus won't accept them from me. But if they came from you, he would listen." Amelia opened the folder. The pages were full of complex charts and coded language she didn't understand. Still, she felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was her chance to clear her name. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. Victor met her gaze for a moment too long before answering. "Because Marcus Hale doesn't deserve someone like you doubting him. And you don't deserve to be punished for his paranoia." After he left, Amelia sat staring at the folder as thunder rolled again in the distance. Something about the exchange felt wrong. The words too rehearsed, the kindness too deliberate. She tucked the documents into her bag but didn't open them again. Meanwhile, at the estate, Marcus sat in his office surrounded by silence. Ethan had asked about Amelia every hour until finally he refused to eat. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt like a mausoleum. Marcus stared at the photo of his brother and sister, then at Ethan's small drawing taped to his desk, 3 stick figures labeled me, uncle, and teacher. His throat tightened. He picked up his phone a dozen times, wanting to call her, but every time his pride stopped him, until a message appeared on his screen from an unknown number. "If you want the truth, meet me at Pier 19 tonight. Come alone." He hesitated, but something in his gut told him to go. That night, fog wrapped around the waterfront like a ghost. Marcus stood beneath a flickering street lamp, his coat collar turned up against the cold. Footsteps echoed behind him, and a voice drifted through the mist. "You're early." Victor emerged from the shadows, a faint smile curving his lips. "I didn't think you'd come." "Where is she?" Marcus demanded. Victor tilted his head. Safe. For now. Marcus's hand clenched into a fist. What did you do? What I had to, Victor replied. You never saw it, Marcus. You built an empire and thought it made you untouchable. But the moment you brought that woman into your life, you handed me everything I needed to destroy you. Realization struck like lightning. It was you, Marcus said quietly. Victor stepped closer, his voice calm and cruel. I leaked the files. I made the world doubt you. And now she's walking around with documents that trace it all back to your company. When she opens them, the authorities will have everything they need to finish you. Marcus lunged forward, but Victor was faster, pulling a small device from his pocket. A single red light blinked. One wrong move, and the data goes public, he warned. A car, Anne, Jean roared nearby. Marcus turned just in time to see Amelia's silhouette stepping from a taxi holding the folder Victor had given her. She froze when she saw them. Amelia! Marcus shouted. Don't open it! Victor smiled. Too late. The sound that followed was deafening, a blast of static from the device followed by the echo of sirens in the distance. Amelia dropped the folder as alarms blared from Marcus's phone security alerts flashing red. Victor vanished into the fog, leaving only the sound of his laughter behind. Marcus ran to Amelia, pulling her close as confusion and panic rippled through the night. He used you, he said, his voice shaking. You were never the target. I was. In that moment, Amelia saw the truth in his eyes, the guilt, the fear, the love buried beneath layers of power. The walls between them shattered, and for the first time they stood together, not as savior and billionaire, but as two people caught in the same fire. Above them, the storm broke again, and the rain returned, washing away the last illusion of safety. The war for truth had begun, and neither of them could walk away now. The rain turned to mist by morning, but the air still carried the scent of smoke from the chaos at the pier. Amelia hadn't slept. She sat on the edge of Marcus's guest room bed, the same one she had once sworn never to return to. Her mind replayed every word Victor had said, every flicker of his cruel smile. Somewhere between anger and fear, a new resolve had begun to take shape inside her. She had been used, manipulated, and nearly destroyed, but not defeated. Downstairs, Marcus paced the length of his study, shirt sleeves rolled up, hair disheveled. The man who had once controlled every outcome now looked like someone fighting ghosts with bare hands. When Amelia stepped into the room, he stopped mid-stride. For a moment, they only stared at each other, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between them. I should have trusted you, he said at last. His voice was hoarse, almost raw. Victor played me perfectly. I let him turn you into a weapon. Amelia took a slow breath. We can still stop him. But you have to tell me everything. No more secrets. Marcus nodded and crossed to the safe hidden behind the painting on the wall. Inside were stacks of files, flash drives, and one black envelope sealed with wax. He handed it to her. Victor has been working with one of my board members, a man named Holloway. They've been siphoning money through shell accounts for years. When I found out and refused to protect them, they set this entire scandal in motion. The goal wasn't just revenge, it was takeover. Amelia frowned, flipping through the documents. So the leaks, the fake photos, all of it, just to force you to step down? To make me desperate enough to sell, Marcus said. They want control of Hale Enterprises, and they'll burn anyone who stands in their way. Before she could answer, the lights flickered. Marcus's phone buzzed with an alert from security. The gate cameras were down. A chill ran through her. They're here, he said quietly. Moments later, the front doors burst open. Black-clad men swept through the entryway with military precision. Marcus grabbed Amelia's hand and pulled her through a side corridor. Private entrance to the garage, he whispered. Stay close. Gunmetal shadows danced along the walls as alarms echoed through the halls. Amelia's heart pounded. They reached a narrow stairwell and descended into darkness. The sound of footsteps followed, measured, confident, getting closer. At the bottom, Marcus stopped and pressed a hidden switch. A section of wall slid open, revealing a concealed tunnel lined with steel. "Go," he said. "What about you?" she asked. "I'll hold them off." "No," she said fiercely. "I'm not leaving you again." Their eyes locked. For a moment, time froze, the world narrowing to the heat between them, the storm outside, and the danger closing in. Then he kissed her, a brief, desperate collision of fear and love. "Whatever happens," he murmured, "remember you saved me long before this night." A voice echoed down the stairwell. "Marcus," Victor called out, his tone almost casual. "You can't hide forever. The police are on their way, and when they find her with you, the story writes itself." Amelia stepped forward. "He's bluffing," she whispered. Marcus nodded. "But we can use that." He guided her through the tunnel to a small security room lit by blue monitors. Most screens showed static, but one displayed the mansion's foyer. Victor stood in the center, smirking, speaking to someone off camera. A woman stepped into frame, tall, elegant, cold. Sophia Holloway. Amelia gasped. "She was your father's business partner." Marcus's eyes hardened. "And Victor's lover." On the monitor, Sophia handed Victor a phone. "Upload the footage," she said. "Let the world watch the great Marcus Hale fall in real time." Marcus moved quickly, pulling up a keyboard and typing commands into the security terminal. "If I can access the old data lines, I can turn their signal back on themselves. The moment they go live, I'll broadcast the evidence of their crimes instead." Amelia touched his arm. "Can you really do that?" He gave her a grim smile. "I built this system myself." Outside the room, the sounds of footsteps grew louder. They had minutes, maybe less. The monitors flickered again, code racing across the screen as Marcus worked. Then, just as Victor lifted his phone to stream, the screens went white. A second later, video filled the airwaves, the hidden transactions, the messages between him and Sophia, the confession he had made at the pier recorded by Marcus's security feed. Victor's expression twisted in horror as his own betrayal filled every screen in the house. "You can't prove." "Oh, but we can," Marcus said, stepping into the foyer with Amelia at his side. "And the police will be here any second to collect what's left of you." Sirens wailed in the distance, rowing louder. Sophia tried to flee, but guards intercepted her. Victor lunged toward Amelia, shouting something incoherent, but Marcus moved faster. One punch sent the man sprawling across the marble floor. When it was over, silence filled the mansion again, broken only by the soft hum of the monitors. Amelia turned to Marcus, her hands still trembling. "It's finished," she whispered. He looked at her, rainwater dripping from his hair, his chest rising and falling with exhaustion. "No," he said softly. "It's only just beginning." Outside, dawn broke over the horizon. The first light touched the mansion's windows, glinting off the remnants of chaos and the promise of something new. For the first time since that day in the park, Marcus and Amelia stood side by side as equals, not savior and saved, but partners in a fight neither could have won alone. The storm had passed, but the fire between them had only just begun. Morning light spilled through the broken windows of the Hale mansion, painting the marble floors in streaks of gold and ash. The chaos of the night before had left scars everywhere, shattered glass bullet holes, and silence that carried the weight of everything they had survived. Marcus stood in the center of it all, his once pristine empire reduced to headlines and investigations. Police cars lined the driveway, reporters shouted from behind barricades, and drones circled above like vultures. But inside the house, there was only him, Amelia, and the truth they had fought to expose. Amelia sat by the fireplace, her arm wrapped in a bandage from a scrape she hadn't even felt during the fight. She looked up as Marcus entered, his expression unreadable. "They arrested Victor and Sophia," he said quietly. "The evidence you helped recover left no room for denial. They're facing decades in prison." She nodded, staring into the flames. "And you?" He hesitated, then lowered his voice. They'll investigate me too. They want to know how deep this corruption ran and whether I looked away for too long. The board will probably demand I step down. Amelia rose to her feet, her voice trembling. You didn't look away, Marcus. You built something good. They twisted it. Don't let them make you believe you're one of them. He looked at her then with eyes stripped of power and pride. Do you really believe I can come back from this? I know you can, she said, because I've seen the man underneath the empire, the one who ran into the rain for a child, the one who stayed when the world told him to run. For a moment, neither spoke. Then a knock echoed from the grand doors. 2 men in dark suits entered, flashing badges. Federal investigators. Marcus nodded and followed them to the study, leaving Amelia standing alone in the echo of his footsteps. Hours passed. Rain began again, gentle at first, then heavier. When Marcus finally emerged, his tie was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled, and his eyes hollow. They froze my accounts, he said. Every asset under review. I might lose everything before this is over. Amelia stepped closer. Then you'll start again. You'll build something new, this time without secrets. A faint smile crossed his lips. You talk as if you plan to be there when it happens. I'm not leaving you, she said simply. That night, as the rain deepened, Marcus sat by the window with a glass of untouched whiskey, while Amelia quietly gathered the scattered papers from the floor. The thunder rolled and lightning flashed across his face, revealing the man who had once ruled cities, now stripped down to his bare soul. You know what's strange? He said softly. When all this started, I thought losing my company would be the end. But standing here, I realized the only thing I couldn't survive was losing you. Before she could answer, a sharp crash came from outside. Marcus jumped to his feet, pulling her behind him. Through the window, they saw a car engulfed in flames at the edge of the property, the fire spreading fast, through the wet night. Alarms blared again, security rushing into motion. Amelia's heart pounded. Was that one of theirs? Marcus's eyes darkened. No, that's a warning. He strode toward his desk, retrieving a small metal case from a hidden drawer. Inside lay a silver flash drive. This is what they were really after, he said. Not the company, not the money. This holds the names of every politician and investor they bribed. Victor wasn't working alone. There's someone bigger, someone who funded everything from the shadows. Amelia's voice shook. Then this isn't over. No, he said grimly. It's just changed shape. He turned to her eyes, fierce with resolve. If they know I still have this, they'll come again. But this time, they won't just come for me. They'll come for you too. I don't care, she said. I'm not afraid anymore. He cupped her face, his touch gentle against the tension in the air. You should be, he whispered, because loving me just became dangerous. Outside, the fire burned brighter, lighting the mansion in a haunting glow. Amelia met his gaze, her heartbeat steady despite the fear. Then, let it burn, she said. We'll walk through it together. In that moment, something unbreakable formed between them, forged in chaos and trust. The empire around them was falling, but what remained was stronger than anything built from money or control. It was the beginning of something new, a love that had survived storms, lies, and betrayal, and now faced the fire head-on. As the night deepened, the two of them stood at the window, watching the flames rise higher, knowing the battle wasn't over. But neither were they. And somewhere in the distance, hidden behind the smoke, a figure watched them from a black car phone pressed to his ear, whispering one final promise. If he thinks the war is over, he's wrong. The real game starts now.
The next morning the mansion smelled faintly of smoke and fear. The fire had been contained, but its message was clear. Whoever had sent it wanted Marcus to know he was being hunted. Amelia woke early, her pulse still racing from the nightmares that bled into dawn. She found Marcus already in the study, his shirt sleeves rolled up, eyes dark with determination. On the table between them lay the silver flash drive, the one Victor had died protecting. "We can't stay here," he said flatly. "They'll come again. Whoever's behind this isn't just after money, they're after silence." "Then let's not give it to them," she said quietly. "Let's expose everything." He looked at her for a long moment, the rain streaking down the window behind him. "You'd be risking your life too." Amelia stepped closer, her voice steady. "I already did the day I saved Ethan. This time I'm saving you." Marcus stared at her with something fierce and unspoken in his eyes, then nodded. "There's someone who can help us. A journalist I trust. If we can get this data to her, she can make it public. Once it's out, they can't touch us." That afternoon they left the estate in disguise, Marcus driving an old car from the garage, the paint dull and the plates unregistered. The city blurred past, gray and rain-soaked. Every shadow felt like a threat, every pair of headlights in the mirror like eyes watching. They met the journalist in a quiet diner at the edge of downtown. She was older, calm, sharp eyes that missed nothing. Marcus slid the flash drive across the table. "This is everything," he said. "Every name, every account, every bribe." The journalist glanced at it, then at him. "If this is real, you'll be starting a war you can't win." "Then we don't win," Marcus replied. "We just tell the truth." She pocketed the drive and rose. "Give me 48 hours. If what's on here is what you claim, it'll be everywhere." When she left, Amelia let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Marcus reached for her hand under the table, his grip firm. "It's almost over," he said, but there was doubt in his tone. That night they checked into a small motel under false names. Amelia couldn't sleep. She stood by the window watching the street below, where a black SUV idled too long before disappearing into the fog. When she turned, Marcus was awake too, sitting at the edge of the bed watching her. "They'll come for us before she can publish," he said quietly. "We need to be ready." "Ready for what?" she asked. "Whatever it takes," he said, but neither of them could have prepared for what came next. At dawn, a knock rattled the motel door. Marcus grabbed his gun and motioned for her to stay back. When he opened it, there was no one outside, only a small package wrapped in brown paper sitting on the doorstep. He brought it inside and cut the string. Inside was a single photograph. Amelia's breath caught. It was a picture of Ethan standing outside his school that morning. On the back in black ink were the words, "Give us the drive or the boy disappears." Marcus's hand shook for the first time since she'd met him. He reached for his phone, but the screen flashed with an incoming message before he could dial. A video feed loaded automatically. Ethan in a car seat, eyes wide, terrified. A voice spoke off camera, calm and cruel. "You have 12 hours. Bring the drive to the old Blackridge plant. Alone. Or the child dies." Amelia felt the floor tilt beneath her. "Marcus, we can't," but his face had gone cold and still. "They took my nephew. They made their choice." She grabbed his arm. "If you go there alone, they'll kill you." "Then I'll take them with me," he said, his voice a low growl. "No," she whispered, fierce and desperate. "We go together." He looked at her, then really looked, and the fight in him broke just enough for pain to surface. "I can't lose you too." "You won't," she said. "But if we don't do this together, we lose everything."
12 hours later, they stood outside the abandoned Blackridge factory, the sky bruised with storm clouds, the air thick with tension. Inside, the shadows moved like predators. Marcus squeezed Amelia's hand once before stepping forward, his voice echoing in the darkness. "You wanted the drive," he called out. "I'm here. Let the boy go." A slow, mocking clap echoed from the rafters. A tall figure stepped into the light, smiling. It wasn't Victor. It was Holloway, alive and unscarred. "You never understood, Marcus," he said softly. "Power isn't taken. It's traded. And today you trade your life for the boys." Amelia's heart pounded. Somewhere in the darkness, Ethan cried out, muffled and afraid. Marcus stepped forward, eyes burning. "Take me. let him go. But Holloway only smiled wider. Oh, I intend to take everything. From the shadows, armed men emerged, their guns gleaming in the half-light. Marcus turned to Amelia and whispered barely loud enough to hear. Run when I say. I'm not leaving, she whispered back. He didn't answer. The air crackled with danger, and then all at once the factory erupted into chaos. The sound of gunfire, the crash of metal, the scream of sirens approaching from afar. And as smoke filled the air and the world blurred into noise, Amelia clung to one thought pulsing in her mind like a heartbeat. If love had brought them here, maybe love could still save them both. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking the world, reduced to flashes of light and sound. Amelia could barely see through the chaos as gunfire echoed off the rusted walls of the factory. She stumbled forward, searching for Ethan's voice, calling his name over the roar of violence. Somewhere behind her, Marcus was shouting orders, his voice fierce, cutting through the noise like thunder. She turned just in time to see him take cover behind a steel beam, returning fire with deadly precision. But there were too many of them, closing in fast. Marcus! She screamed. But the sound was swallowed by another explosion as one of the old fuel barrels ignited. Flames raced up the walls, painting everything in red and gold. She dropped to the floor, covering her head as debris rained down around her. Then through the smoke she saw a small figure bound to a chair near the far wall. Ethan, his eyes wide with terror. Without thinking, she ran. A bullet grazed her shoulder, but she didn't stop. She reached the boy, cutting through his ropes with a jagged piece of metal. It's okay, baby, I've got you, she whispered, pulling him close. He clung to her, trembling. Where's Uncle Marcus? She didn't answer because she didn't know. The fire roared closer, heat searing her face. Suddenly, strong hands grabbed her arm. Marcus emerged from the smoke, his clothes torn, his face streaked with blood and soot. Relief hit her like a wave. You're alive, she gasped. I told you I'd come back, he said, his voice rough but steady. They turned toward the exit, but Holloway stepped into their path, gun raised, calm and smiling despite the chaos around him. Touching, he said. But this ends here. Marcus pushed Amelia and Ethan behind him. You don't have to do this, he said. Oh, but I do, Holloway replied. You were supposed to fall quietly, Marcus. Now everyone will see how empires really die. He pulled the trigger, but the shot never landed. Amelia reacted before she could think, hurling a metal rod that struck his wrist. The gun clattered to the floor and Marcus lunged, tackling him hard. The two men crashed into the concrete, fighting with raw fury, years of betrayal erupting in every blow. Amelia shielded Ethan as they rolled across the ground, the gun sliding across the floor toward her. She grabbed it with shaking hands. Marcus, she cried. Holloway broke free, reaching for his weapon again, but Amelia didn't hesitate. The shot rang out sharp and final, echoing through the burning factory. Holloway fell silent, eyes wide, as he collapsed. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Marcus turned to her, his expression unreadable. You saved us, he whispered. Sirens wailed outside, growing louder. Firefighters and police swarmed through the shattered doors, pulling them to safety. Amelia clung to Ethan while paramedics checked them both. Marcus refused treatment until he was sure they were safe. When the officers questioned him, he handed over the flash drive, his voice calm. Everything you need is on this. Every name, every deal, every bribe. As dawn broke over the smoking ruins, Marcus stood beside Amelia, watching the lights spill over the horizon. The world they had known was gone, but in its place, something new was being born. Reporters shouted his name. Police lights flashed, but for the first time in years, Marcus felt peace. Weeks later, the headlines told a different story. Corruption ring exposed by former billionaire CEO and teacher. Child rescued as evidence destroys political network. The world finally saw the truth. Marcus sold what was left of his company and donated the proceeds to rebuild schools and community centers under Amelia's direction. Together they founded the Hale Education Trust, dedicated to helping children like Ethan find safety and hope. One afternoon, months later, Amelia stood in a sunlit classroom surrounded by laughter and crayons. Marcus entered quietly holding a small velvet box. She turned and froze as he knelt before her. "I once thought power meant control," he said softly. "But you showed me it means surrender. I built empires and lost them all. But what I found in you is worth more than any kingdom. Amelia Voss, will you marry me?" Her eyes filled with tears. "You already know the answer." Ethan cheered from the doorway, and the room erupted in laughter. Marcus rose, pulling her into his arms, and the world outside seemed to fade. That night, as the three of them walked through the park where it all began, rain started to fall again, soft and warm. Amelia looked up at the sky, smiling. "It's strange," she said. "Every time it rains, I remember that day. The day everything changed." Marcus slipped his hand into hers. "The day you saved my family," he said. "And the day you saved me." They stood together under the rain, their past washed clean by everything they had survived. And as the city lights flickered around them, Marcus kissed her gently, a promise of forever whispered against the sound of the storm. The woman who once risked her life for a stranger's nephew had found her own miracle not in wealth or power, but in love that had been forged through fire and rain. The story that began with chaos ended with peace, and every raindrop that fell that night felt like a blessing on a love that refused to die.